Chapter 5. At exactly 2 o'clock, Penelope peeked out the living room window just as Jacob drove up to her house in his bright yellow Volkswagen. She'd changed when she'd returned home, deciding on a lightweight linen slacks and her favorite flowered blouse. She left the blouse untucked to cover her generous waistline. For the next hour, she slid in and out of Jacob's car to view different areas of roses, and soon discovered that her slacks and blouse were completely wrinkled. Fortunately, her sneakers were comfortable. She'd worn the same outfit behind a desk in an air-conditioned office several times in the past. Today, she'd imagined driving by a few neighborhoods with Jacob, then sitting across from him at her favorite coffee shop while sipping a vanilla latte. He, on the other hand, was dressed more appropriately in khaki shorts and a green cotton golf shirt. "You look gorgeous," he'd said when he arrived at her front door. She'd flushed with the compliment, though now she felt plain. Her blouse had soiled when they peered into the grimy window of an abandoned, dilapidated house on Brook Street. Dusty sunshine filled the interior. "I like the house," he remarked when they were once again settled in his car and headed back to town. "I like Victorian homes." "You're joking," she said. "I wouldn't know where to begin, except to hire a bulldozer." "I'll grant the house is in dire need of repairs, but it has good bones." "Bones? Let's start with the roof." "What's wrong with the roof?" "It's caving in," she reminded. "Are you handy with tools?" He smirked. "I don't even own a toolkit, though I guess I should put it on my Christmas list if I buy the house. However, this location is excellent." She surveyed the street. "There are several mom-and-pop stores in the area." "The home is big, unlike your car," she observed. He chuckled and patted the dashboard. "Can't beat compact and reliable." He switched on the radio to a contemporary station. She recognized the holiday tune, remarking that it wasn't even Halloween yet, and they were playing Christmas music. Jacob tapped the rhythm of "It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year" on the steering wheel and sang in a deep baritone voice. "The house is what I want most," he continued when he'd finished singing. "Which is?" she asked. "Besides you?" "Get out of here." He grinned. "I'll tell you when we arrive in town." Despite the outfit mistake, she enjoyed the hours with him. He was interesting, with a grand sense of humor and a clear disdain for the other homes they drove by. He seemed to gravitate to the old, run-down house. Finally, they took a break for cups of sweet lemonade from a sidewalk stand. "Soon the downtown will decorate for the holidays." Penelope gestured up and down the street. "We even hold a bake-off contest." "We?" "Yes, I'm a resident of the town," she admonished him. He grinned. "Me too." Karen and Desiree, a husband and wife team, own O'Malley's Irish Pub. Karen bakes whiskey cakes. He usually wins the contest because his cakes are delicious, although Desiree's pistachio cake is equally delicious. "I've never baked so much as a cupcake, but I'll patronize a good bakery any day." Jacob chuckled. "I lived in Atlanta for many years, and there are several well-known bakeries specializing in smiling gingerbread men and chocolate Santas around the holidays." "I love sweets," she admitted with a sigh. "However, I'm set on healthy eating in order to lose a few pounds." "I agree with the healthy eating part." Jacob swept an arm around her shoulders and gave a caring squeeze. "In Atlanta, a spectacular Stone Mountain Christmas serves all sorts of food. Some might be healthy." "You'll love the holiday events here too," she said. "Food trucks line the streets on weekends in December. If you're up for a 30-minute drive, an entire town lights up every house for Christmas and is utterly charming." I look forward to it. So far, roses reminds me of a Rockwell painting. Jacob placed a hand on the small of Penelope's back while directing her toward a bench. I hope you'll accompany me to Atlanta. Her heart thumped a joyful beat. Jacob wanted to include her in his Christmas plans. On one condition, Penelope balanced the cup of lemonade in her hands and situated herself on the bench. You allow me to treat. Nope. She took in a breath, about to object, and he shook his head. I'm aware you don't date, so we won't call it a date. Like today. Today isn't a date. Today is a house hunting day. Exactly. Good. He'd gotten the message, though she suddenly felt empty despite her firm assertions. Apparently her emotions hadn't gotten the same message. No. She couldn't be falling for him. Wasn't her unsuccessful marriage, her pathetic attempts at dating, evidence enough? Romance is off the table for me, she declared, to firm up her assertion. My last attempt was dating a teacher at my son's school. I wanted to like him because he was a great guy. He was fun, but we always ran out of things to talk about. I wondered after I broke it off if it was him or me. Either way, I wasn't willing to commit to anything beyond a shared pizza. No dates, no pizza. Jacob saluted her. Romance memo received loud and clear. She drew a long breath and groped for a subject change. Candy mentioned you were a discriminating house buyer. Today, I witnessed firsthand what she meant. I'm certain she used a stronger word than discriminating. Her description was picky. Completely true. His mouth twisted in amusement. I intend to establish a practice in my home, and my choice is important both professionally and personally. You're looking for a house big enough to live in and practice medicine? Yes, a neighborhood made up of both businesses and residential. He gestured up and down the block. Similar to your area. Why? She asked. Homey. Convenience. I'll be more available for my patients. In Atlanta, my practice was becoming more of a business. Something happened. Several things. And I realized I needed to make a change. She offered a murmur of acknowledgement when he didn't supply any additional information. Why did you become a doctor? As I mentioned, my family moved to the States, and because of the bankruptcy, all we could afford was a mobile home in an impoverished area. We had nothing at first, not even furniture. We'd sit on the living room floor and pray. At her quizzical expression, he explained, Me, my mom, father, and sister. And then? And then God delivered. We worked odd jobs and eventually scraped up enough money to purchase several acres of farmland. He drained his lemonade, then gazed at her. My mom wanted me to stay on the farm and help. In fact, she suggested I quit school early. She doesn't believe education is important. And I refused. When I graduated, I got out of town as soon as I could and never looked back. Your parents still live on the farm? My mom does. Your father? He disappeared several years ago. He's not the sort of guy who sticks around when the going gets rough. Who helps your mother with... Penelope began. My sister lives in Maryland. He closed his eyes for a beat. I understand my mom's concerns. After all, she's alone and running a farm. But I just couldn't stay, only to please her. Penelope gazed back at him, giving him her full attention. You're not a farmer? Hardly. I can't even grow an herb. One can never have too many herbs. He grinned, obviously appreciative of her attempt to ease the conversation, but he soon sobered. There were few doctors or dentists where I grew up. My sister married young, and her daughter, Linda, An accident occurred when she was 7. He breathed in a deep lungful of air. His silence, a heartfelt emotion, was so palpable she could almost taste it. Go on. I didn't intend to ask so many questions. But yes, she did. She waited for his reply and scanned the park across the way, the children running and playing tag. Autumn was a magnificent season. Gold and red leaves twirled to the ground, and the landscape was splashed with color. She acknowledged several parents as they pushed their toddlers on the swings. This was the advantage of small-town living. Some called it a downside, though she understood both sides. Linda didn't receive the adequate care required for her condition, at least not in my opinion, Jacob continued. Our community lacked quality medical doctors. Soon afterwards, I decided to become a doctor and make a difference. Somewhere along the line, I got sidetracked while climbing the ladder of success. I strove to be the best in my field. That's a good thing. Maybe I wanted to prove something. To whom? He didn't reply for a moment. Maybe my mom, maybe myself. Were you the best? I accepted a position at one of the country's leading children's hospitals. He opened his cell phone and scrolled to the photos, tapping a picture of a hospital sign to make it larger. Penelope recognized the Atlanta hospital immediately. Impressive. Congratulations. Thanks. I was passed over several times when I applied for the position of public health and administrative leadership. This last time was the final straw. I was experienced and the most qualified for the job. So you quit? An administrative role was my biggest dream. I worked my entire career for the opportunity. I wanted more. He met her gaze. I sound bitter, don't I? A little. You're human. She tilted her head back to view him better. His recklessly handsome features regarded her. His face was captivating, almost boyish, especially when the strong jawline and keenly carved mouth were changed by one of his devastating smiles. Beyond them, bluebirds flew through the air, spinning and diving from tree to tree. She had the urge to slip off her shoes and relish the cool grass tickling her toes. I'm learning how to be content and follow my focus to help people, though I may disappoint others, he said. Life is an interesting balance. Balance between what? Contentment and complacency. I never want to be complacent. Like me? You're not complacent. I haven't changed jobs yet, she reminded him. Your job is important. He tucked his cell phone back in his pocket. Just remember not to limit yourself. The family business is what I know. All my life, I questioned my career choices and long hours, he said. I couldn't put my finger on what needed to change. When I quit my job in Atlanta, I visited several areas in search of a medical practice to purchase. Then I learned Dr. Damien's office was available, and here I am. It's odd how things work out. I never considered a small town setting before, because a small town is beneath your big city aspirations? Thanks, Penelope. The salary and benefits are obviously greater in Atlanta. No question. My job was becoming soulless, though. Do you intend on settling here permanently? Yes. He regarded her. His expression changed, turning thoughtful. He rubbed his thumb along her palm and raised her hand to his lips. Her heart lurched. Why roses? Hard-working, down-to-earth folks are the best. Lightly, he kissed her fingers, and her hand tingled. I'm a medical man, and serving in a large hospital was rewarding for 2 decades. But circumstances led to my change of heart, and the end result is a blessing. Her eyes widened as she digested his remark. What circumstances? What do you mean? Circumstances suggest more than one thing happened. She slid her hand away and tucked it securely behind her back. You mentioned being passed over for the higher hospital positions. What was the other circumstance? Sad story. He suddenly became absorbed with studying the brick pavement. A family tragedy. Your niece? He didn't reply. Your mother? She's okay. We only talk when I reach out to her. Penelope set her cup down and touched his forearm. Whatever the tragedy, he preferred to keep the heartache to himself. I'm glad you chose to land in roses, she finally said. Me too. His intense brown eyes locked with hers, and a quiver of attraction shot through her. Lucky you. Why? You heard all my problems on the plane. A thought occurred. I'm surprised I didn't scare you off. If anything, I was more intrigued. He pointed to a simple wood-sided building. Look, Roses has an animal shelter. I'm well aware. Evan reminds me every day on the way to school when we pass by. Have you ever stopped in? She nodded. We visited several times. The precious animals break my heart, and I want to bring all of them home. Almost 2 months ago, the shelter took in a pregnant stray. They think she is a terrier mix, mostly Scottish. How soon is she due? She had her puppies. An entire litter for Christmas? He tried to suppress a smile. Evan will be thrilled. How many? On average, dogs have 5 to 10 puppies. She had 6. Penelope swallowed, a bubble of laughter. Good try, Jacob. All that pleasure in one litter, and you're still deciding? Psst. Cats are easier. Playfully, he nudged her. Let's go see for ourselves. Penelope picked up their cups and discarded them in the trash. A few minutes later, they climbed the stairs and walked through the shelter's doors. Be forewarned, a volunteer teasingly wagged her finger. You'll probably fall in love. I'm inquiring about the terrier mix, Penelope said. She recently had puppies. The volunteer bobbed her head. The dog is out back. The vet is examining her. Are you ready to bring a sweet, furry friend home today? She's on our VIP status. Meaning? Jacob asked. She's been here a while and we don't want her to be overlooked. The volunteer met Jacob's gaze. I'm interested in possibly adopting one of her puppies, Penelope said. She and Jacob peered into the cages as they walked down the aisles. Dogs with expressive, adoring eyes stared back at them. Penelope wanted to pass her fingers through the soft fur of each dog, colors of apricot, gray, silver, brown, and black. Whether the dog's characteristics resembled a pug or a husky, they all had the cutest faces. The volunteer announced that the mother dog, named Nutcracker, had been brought back to her cage, and they all stepped over. The dog's compact build and short legs, distinct white coat, and overall sturdiness brought a heartfelt smile to Penelope's lips. This dog is more precious every time I see her, she said. I agree, she's gorgeous. He glanced at the volunteer. May I pet her? The volunteer opened the cage, and the dog stepped out. Sure, Nutcracker will sniff you until she approves. Right. Jacob bent down and held his hand in a fist. He averted his gaze so that he wasn't looking directly at the dog. Once he passed the sniff test, he gently petted the dog's shoulders. Penelope crouched down with him and smiled. You're comfortable with dogs, she said. Nutcracker, apparently satisfied, turned and found a cozy spot in her cage. 6 squirming, wriggling puppies with pink markings on their tiny paws playfully romped and wagged their tails. Though wobbly on their feet, Their liveliness knew no bounds. All the puppies had white fur, their coats velvety and fluffy. They yipped and yelped, boisterous, and paying no attention to Penelope and Jacob. 2 boys and 4 girls, the volunteer declared. She warned the puppies weren't old enough to be picked up yet and handled, as they were only approaching 4 weeks. Furthermore, the puppies weren't adoptable before 7 to 9 weeks of age. "Which puppy are you choosing for Evan?" Jacob asked, after he thanked the volunteer. He clasped Penelope's hand, and they walked back to their bench across the street. "When the time comes, the decision will be up to him. A puppy is a huge commitment, and I'm still not certain whether Evan is up to the task." Penelope sighed. "Or if I am, because I'll probably assume the brunt of the work. I'm still weighing the pros and cons." "Tough to do." "Depends on which side of the fence you're on. Practical like me, or more laid back and irresponsible like Evan." I try to agree with the parent, except in this instance. Jacob studied her for a long moment. "A puppy will teach Evan responsibility." "You're a big help. Then I'll have a puppy and a hamster running around the house. Or 6 puppies if you have your way. Please don't encourage Evan when he's at your clinic." "I wouldn't dream of it." Jacob chuckled. "Though there's something about puppies that triggers empathy." He rested his arm along the back of the bench and turned to her, his gaze focusing on her lips. "I can't discuss my puppy dilemma when you stare at me." She dabbed at her chin with her forefinger. "Am I dripping lemonade peel?" He leaned toward her and rubbed his fingers along her chin. "Penelope Reed, you are lovely, and I can't stop looking at you. You've successfully diverted my attention away from the puppies." "I'm not doing anything except sitting next to you." "Reason enough to break my concentration." "Quit joking." She jabbed at him with her elbow. She tried, though she couldn't tamp down the bewildering yet indisputable flurries in her chest. She felt like a teen again, all nervous and agitated and captivated by a guy. Oh, no, she firmly reminded herself. She didn't intend to date any man, and besides, Jacob wasn't interested in her. He intended to keep things simple, if that was the correct word he used. Plus, he was committed to his career. However, her impractical brain shoved the thoughts to the side. His gaze ran along her face. "Gorgeous," he murmured, giving her an admiring smile. She heard herself inhale, but didn't move. He bent his head. Softly, he kissed her, his lips touching hers. "You taste so sweet," he whispered. "Lemons are sour," she teased, "but lemonade is sweet." "We can't begin anything, Jacob. I'm not looking for a relationship." "Neither am I." At least he was honest, although for some reason his admission disappointed her. She covered her disappointment with a topic switch. "Roses needed an excellent pediatrician and all-around doctor. The residents are thrilled you're here." "All the residents?" "Every single one." "Good." His lips were still close, his gaze hooded. Evidently, he wasn't self-conscious about kissing her in the middle of town. His scent was clean, the outdoors coupled with a trace of mail. She pushed down the urge to wrap her arms around him, to feel the hard muscles of his forearms, his cotton shirt pressed against her cheek. "I plan to serve the community, then I will ease up to pursue things I enjoy," he murmured. "I hope you'll do the same." If he referred to her wooden dolls, she'd moved the craft to a back burner. "Things like what?" "Things like..." His eyebrows drew together as his cell phone pinged. He read the message and stood. "I'm sorry, Penelope, but we'll have to forego our dinner plans for another evening. An emergency has come up at the clinic." She stood alongside him. Nothing serious, I hope. A preteen girl swallowed a bee. He typed a response into his phone. I recommended to the head nurse that the girl drink water, but I'll see her just in case. Will she be okay? I look for localized swelling, though she may suffer mild pain. Penelope matched his long strides to the car. Several times his hands brushed against hers. When he parked at the curb of her home, a few minutes later, he cracked the windows open, letting in a breeze, and apologized again. Such is the life of a pediatrician. I'll double my efforts to wow you by treating you to the fanciest place in town. There's an exquisite farm-to-table restaurant getting rave reviews. He flashed a grin before dashing around to the passenger side to open the door for her. He'd opened the door when he'd picked her up earlier, too. He was a polite, considerate man. She liked that about him. Please, Jacob, don't apologize, and a fancy dinner isn't required. It's not a date, Penelope, he said. We'll call our time together something else. Like what? He kissed her temple, then whispered in her ear, I'll think of something.